English Politics Podcast.
English Politics Podcast.
English Politics Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the English Politics Podcast, where we bring you in-depth conversations with some of the most influential political figures of our time. I'm your host, Jennifer Wilson, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today for an exciting and eye-opening episode. Today, we're taking you straight to the heart of power inside the White House during one of the most transformative presidencies in modern history. Our focus? The secret plans that defined Donald Trump's administration. What were the decisions that shaped America's policies, but remained under the radar? How did President Trump navigate some of the most challenging moments of his time in office? And what lessons does he have for the future of leadership? It is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome none other than the 45th President of the United States, Mr. Donald J. Trump. President Trump, thank you for joining us on the English Politics Podcast. How are you today?
Thank you, Jennifer. It's great to be here. And let me just say, you're doing a tremendous job with this podcast. People are talking about it everywhere. It's a great platform, and I'm looking forward to a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Mr. President. That means a lot coming from you. Let's dive right in, shall we? The theme of today's episode is Inside Trump's White House. The secret plans. Your administration was one of the most talked about in modern history, with supporters praising your bold decision-making and critics constantly speculating about what was going on behind closed doors. Many of your decisions, such as your America First policy and tax reforms, were highly publicized. But today we want to go beyond what the headlines covered and explore the hidden strategies that shaped your presidency. To start, can you tell us about one pivotal moment in your presidency that the public doesn't fully understand?
Well, Jennifer, there were many pivotal moments, but one that comes to mind is when we negotiated trade deals that were hugely beneficial to the United States. People think these things just happen overnight, but there's a lot of strategy, a lot of careful planning. What people didn't see were the long nights, the intense discussions, and the tough calls we had to make. And trust me, we made some of the best deals this country has ever seen. They were phenomenal deals. But the media didn't always cover the details, which is why platforms like yours are so important.
Let's break this down further. I have a few questions for you, Mr. President, to help our listeners gain a deeper understanding. What was your thought process when implementing the America First policy?
America First was about putting our citizens first. I looked at trade, immigration, and military policies and asked, how does this benefit the American people? It wasn't about being anti-global. It was about prioritizing our workers, businesses, and families. We rebuilt the economy, created millions of jobs, and made sure America was respected on the global stage. Every decision was about delivering results for the people who trusted us to lead.
Many people were curious about your communication strategy. How did you decide what to say publicly versus privately?
Great question, Jennifer. I was always direct. The American people deserve honesty, even if it's tough to hear. But in private, I worked closely with my team to strategize. Transparency is key, but so is timing. You can't reveal your hand to adversaries too soon. It was about balance, letting people know the truth while protecting national interests.
Looking back, what was your proudest achievement during your time in office?
There's so much to be proud of, but if I had to choose, it would be rebuilding the economy. Before the pandemic, we had the lowest unemployment rates in history for many groups, including African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Wages were rising, and businesses were thriving. We showed the world that American ingenuity and determination could overcome any obstacle.
Lastly, Mr. President, how do you think your presidency will be remembered?
I believe history will remember my presidency as one of action and results. We disrupted the status quo, challenged the establishment, and proved that bold leadership could deliver big wins for the American people. Whether it was strengthening the military, reshaping trade policies, or securing the Supreme Court, we left a lasting legacy. And that's something I'll always be proud of.
Inside Trump's White House, the secret plans. As the world looked on, analyzing every move of the Trump administration, much of what truly shaped his presidency happened behind closed doors. Beyond media headlines and public speeches lay a world of strategic maneuvering, high-stakes negotiations, and calculated decisions designed to reshape America's role on the global stage. This is the untold story of Donald Trump's presidency, where the most consequential moments were often the quietest ones. The foundation of strategy. Before Donald Trump officially entered office, his transition team began laying the groundwork for what would become a defining presidency. Unlike many of his predecessors, Trump approached governance as a businessman, not a politician. His focus was on results, metrics, deliverables, and returns on investment. From day one, his cabinet was instructed to identify areas where the United States was not operating at peak efficiency. Whether it was trade agreements, military spending, or healthcare policies, Trump wanted to know, what's the ROI for the American people? One of his first confidential directives involved a thorough audit of existing international agreements. NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, quickly rose to the top of the list as a deal Trump believed was outdated and unfair. Behind the scenes, teams of trade experts worked tirelessly to renegotiate terms that would favor American industries. The media would later focus on the public controversies surrounding these deals, but few realized the hours of research, late-night meetings, and intricate negotiations that went into what would eventually become the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. A calculated approach to global affairs. In the realm of foreign policy, Trump's administration adopted an unconventional approach. His direct communication style, often criticized as brash, masked a deliberate strategy. For Trump, unpredictability was a tool. Advisors were called meetings where he would stress the importance of keeping America's adversaries guessing. This philosophy was particularly evident in his dealings with North Korea. The media highlighted Trump's fiery exchanges with Kim Jong-un, but the real story happened away from the cameras. Confidential channels of communication were established, allowing for unprecedented dialogue between the two nations. The historic meeting in Singapore, where Trump became the first sitting U.S. president to meet with a North Korean leader, was the result of months of secret planning. Trump believed that projecting strength publicly while extending an olive branch privately was the key to shifting decades of stalemate. The Middle East, too, became a focal point of Trump's quiet plans. The Abraham Accords, which normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations, were the culmination of countless diplomatic efforts. Jared Kushner, a senior advisor and Trump's son-in-law, played a central role, coordinating with leaders behind the scenes. Trump's White House operated on the belief that peace in the Middle East required bold, unorthodox steps. The Accords, while celebrated, were just one piece of a broader strategy to realign alliances in the region. The domestic agenda, a push for efficiency. Domestically, Trump's secret plans revolved around deregulation and economic revitalization. Early in his presidency, Trump ordered a comprehensive review of federal regulations. His goal was to eliminate unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles that he believed stifled innovation and economic growth. His administration introduced a 2-for-1 rule, requiring that for every new regulation introduced, 2 existing regulations had to be eliminated. While critics argued that this approach favored corporations over environmental and consumer protections, Trump's team believed it was a necessary step to revitalize American industry. Advisors were called closed-door meetings where Trump would ask, "How does this rule help the American worker? If it doesn't, get rid of it." Tax reform was another pillar of Trump's domestic strategy. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, a landmark piece of legislation, was publicly celebrated as a win for businesses and the middle class. What the public didn't see were the countless hours of debate among White House advisors, congressional leaders, and economic experts. Trump personally pushed for provisions that he believed would incentivize companies to bring jobs back to the United States. His emphasis on repatriating wealth and investment became a recurring theme throughout his presidency. The art of public perception. A recurring theme throughout Trump's presidency was his focus on public perception. While many saw his frequent tweets and rallies as impulsive, Those close to him described a calculated effort to control the narrative. Trump understood the power of media and used it to his advantage. Behind the scenes, his communications team worked to craft messaging that resonated with his base. Speechwriters recalled sessions where Trump would insist on simplicity and repetition, knowing that clear, memorable phrases were more likely to stick with the public. "Make America Great Again" was not just a slogan. It was a carefully constructed brand that encapsulated his administration's goals. Legacy and reflection. As Trump's presidency came to an end, the White House began compiling a comprehensive report of its accomplishments. While public attention often focused on the controversies, Trump's inner circle took pride in the administration's less publicized achievements. From criminal justice reform to energy independence, they believed their efforts had fundamentally reshaped America's trajectory. Reflecting on his time in office, Trump often spoke about the importance of thinking big. "You can't make real change if you're afraid to ruffle feathers," he would tell his team. For Trump, success was measured not by popularity, but by impact. His secret plans, many of which remained unknown to the public, were a testament to his belief in bold, decisive leadership. As the chapter of Trump's presidency closed, the full scope of his strategies and decisions continued to unfold. Love him or hate him, Donald Trump's time in office was a period of transformation, marked by a relentless pursuit of what he believed was best for America. And while the public may never know the full extent of his plans, those who worked alongside him will remember a leader who dared to think differently. Thank you, President Trump, for sharing these incredible insights. It's been a fascinating discussion, and I'm sure our listeners are walking away with a greater understanding of the strategies that defined your presidency. Before we wrap up, I'd like to invite our listeners to support the English Politics Podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring you exclusive interviews with influential leaders, diving deep into the issues that matter most. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with your friends and family who are passionate about politics, leadership, and the future of our country. Thank you again, Mr. President, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Stay tuned for more engaging conversations on the English Politics Podcast. See you next time.